What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I'm making a video today because I have something that I want to talk about. As usual, I'll try and keep it as short as possible, but I have one topic in particular that I want to discuss. I haven't made a video in a couple days, so that's part of it. I wanted to put something out there for you guys. But there is something that, obviously I follow the streams, follow the news, and obviously I make a video anytime there's anything relevant. And there's really not anything particular that is necessarily newsworthy, but there is something that I think is important that does need to be discussed. Real quick, let's note that Ryan Fitzpatrick won AFC Player of the Week last week for his performance. 419 yards, 4 touchdowns, etc. So congratulations to him. Also, there's, talk and rumors that he might not come back next year, that he might retire even though he's under contract. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I mean, we already know we're going to get a quarterback this upcoming draft, but that will be interesting to see how that plays out. Because then if we're just with Josh Rosen and, the new guy, I mean, anyway, so we'll get there when we get there. So what spurred this, though, and so this conversation, right, because a lot of people, and I've been talking about how, apparently the Dolphins fan base still has about 70+% approval percentage for where this team is going. Now, part of that is because they believe that Chris Grier and Stephen Ross, etc., and the Reggie McKenzie, Marvin Allen, and Brian Flores, that they're going to be able to get it right. Let's note that people were bitching about the Adam Gase regime because they had too many people in the room with Stephen Ross, Mike Tannenbaum, Chris Grier, and Adam Gase. That's 4 guys. So people were saying that those drafts were fucked up even though they actually turned out really good, and we're going to look at those in this video, okay? But that those drafts got fucked up in part because they had so many people in the room. Well, now they're going to have, that's 4 guys. Now they're going to have Stephen Ross, Chris Grier, Marvin Allen, Reggie McKenzie, and Brian Flores. Now they're going to have 5 guys in the room. Just a quick note there. But here's what actually spurred this, right? It's a tweet from Adam Beasley. People love bringing up Chris Grier's misses, but they don't give him enough credit for his hits. Mike Gesicki is a legit starter. He is 12th among NFL tight ends with 47 catches for 536 yards and 4 touchdowns. His emergence should change the narrative on the 2018 draft class. Okay, well, so, I wanted to take a look at the 2018 draft class, and I wanted to get some perspective on it, along with the previous couple draft classes. So I actually wanted to look at the past 3. Well, not the 2019 draft class. Actually, you know what? We'll throw that one in there as well. So let's look at 16, 17, 18, and 19. Okay, now, ideally, you want to try and at least hit on like half of your draft picks. I mean, you're not going to hit on all of them, etc., right? But you want to at least try and hit on half of them. You want to try and at least maybe come away with some, some superstars, whatever, right? Now, every draft is different. Every dynamic's going to be different. You're going to have a different amount of picks, etc., etc., etc. So obviously, it's all case by case. But let's go ahead and look at the 2016 draft class, which was the first one under Adam Gase. So we get Laramie Tunsil, okay, in round 1, who is a who is a generational talent at left tackle, okay? He, is Pro Bowl, All-Pro talent. He's helping the Texans, helped them secure their, division and a playoff spot, and could help them, win in the playoffs, okay? So already the 2016 draft class is phenomenal. Then you get Xavier Howard, who has been a baller for us, right? And Laramie Tunsil, even in his first year, had to play guard. He still played it, pretty well, right? And then he had a phenomenal second year at left tackle. And then, he's had a few penalties this year, whatever. But he's been, pretty much at his normal spectacular level with the Texans. He's just got to, get comfortable there. It takes a minute to get adjusted. He'll be fine. He's going to go on to win, Pro Bowl votes. He's going to the Pro Bowl this year, right? So, anyway. And then Xavier Howard, we all know the beast that he is. That was round 2. Kenyon Drake. So, he had some guys ahead of him here at times. He wasn't quite used properly, certainly under this regime, et cetera, et cetera. So we didn't see the full potential out of him, but he's killing it for the Cardinals as their lead back. Okay, and I think he has a bright future there. Kenyon Drake is a great pickup. Leonte Crew was our next 3rd round pick. I did think that was a bit of a reach at the time, and it has proven to be so. So, okay, so that's more of a miss. Jakeem Grant, I think overall has been a hit. Jordan Lucas, he's playing somewhere for another team. I don't know where, but for the Dolphins, you could say that's kind of a miss. Brandon Doughty and Thomas Duarte were after that. So I would say those are overall misses. So you hit on half of your guys, right? Laramie Tunsil, Xavier Howard, Kenyon Drake, and Jakeem Grant. All hits. Those are half of your draft class. So you hit on half the draft class in 2016. And you got a couple superstars in Laramie Tunsil and Xavier Howard. So I would say the 2016 draft class was amazing. Let's look at 2017. Okay, round 1, Charles Harris. So far, he hasn't lived up to his potential, and he's definitely getting towards the end of his rookie contract, and so it is getting to that time to judge him. This coaching staff might not even keep him around, to be honest. But he also was playing in a very different defensive scheme this season. But he wasn't, to be fair and to be honest, he wasn't particularly great in the defensive scheme that he was playing with Gase and the Dolphins at that time. So he's kind of a neutral as of right now, but leaning a little bit more towards a miss. Raekwon McMillan, I think, has been an overall hit. Cordray Tankersley has been an overall miss. Isaac Asiato is an overall miss. But Devon Godshaw and Vincent Taylor, Devon Godshaw is like the best defensive lineman we have right now and is still ascending. Vincent Taylor is with the Bills right now, but he's killing it, right? He has over 10 sacks, I think. Oh, no, wait. I'm sorry. That's Jordan Phillips. Never mind. Vincent Taylor is with the Bills, though, and is playing in their rotation. I don't know. I'm sorry. I was thinking about Jordan Phillips. I don't know what he's doing, but he was great in our rotation when we had him. I would say he's kind of a neutral, but more on the hit side. And then Isaiah Ford, he's done some good things for us recently since we've had to use him. But overall, I'd say he's been a neutral, leaning a little bit more towards the miss side, but since he's been kind of forced into the lineup and has done some good things, I think he's an all-around neutral. But in that draft class, you have, let's say, out of the players that I would consider to be hits or neutral, either neutral, leaning toward the hit side, or just full-on hits, you have Raekwon McMillan, Devon Godshaw, Vincent Taylor, and Isaiah Ford. So that's half your draft class. You didn't really get any superstars necessarily, but you got serviceable guys. And certainly for the vision that Adam Gase was trying to build there, I think that, those were good guys to have in the lineup, especially for the rotation on the defensive line, wanting to make sure that you constantly have fresh guys in at defensive tackle and defensive end. Right? Now, did they need to improve upon the talent, and did they, overall miss on Charles Harris? Yes. But that draft class overall was more of a hit than it was a miss. Okay, now let's look at the 2018 draft class. You start with Minkah Fitzpatrick. Amazing. He had a great fucking first year for us. He was absolutely misused this year by Brian Flores and his team. He was used slightly out of position in his rookie season under Adam Gase, i.e. he had to be used at boundary corner a little bit because we had holes there. We needed somebody, and he was capable of doing it and did it in college. So, but that's a massive hit. He's a superstar. He's balling out for the Steelers, right? So that's 100% a massive hit slash superstar. Then you look at Mike Gesicki. Everybody wants to give Brian Flores credit for Mike Gesicki, but why? Now, to be fair, have they helped his progression in his second year? Yes, sure. But he has also been forced into not just the lineup. I mean, I would say he was probably going to be in the lineup regardless, but he's been forced the ball a little bit because we have had to be pass heavy. Our run game is absolutely garbage. And so he's been forced some more targets because of that, and because we don't have any receivers except for him and Devontae Parker. And both of those guys at least give Ryan Fitzpatrick the opportunity to just, chuck it up there, and they have a good chance of coming down with the 50-50 ball. So, but we all knew that Mike Gesicki had the talent and the ability to be a great pass catcher. I mean, he did wonderful things in college. It was his blocking game that was severely lacking, and he's at least a respectable blocker now because of Adam Gase. Okay, and he was, of course, an Adam Gase pick, right? And so, was Chris Grier a major part of that? Yes. But if Gase wasn't here, I bet you anything Gesicki wouldn't be here. I guarantee you these drafts, especially with Stephen Ross at the helm, because Stephen Ross objected to the Minkah Fitzpatrick pick. He wanted to get a quarterback. Okay, so, but Mike Gesicki, definitely a hit. Jerome Baker, at this point, definitely a hit. Durham Smythe, I would say, he was picked more for his blocking prowess, right? So, did they want Gesicki last year to be a better blocker, and did they needed him to be? Yes, because there are going to be times where he is going to be needed in pass protection or whatever, and he's got to be able to prove that he can do that so he can earn the trust of his teammates and his coaches to be able to get in there and earn the reps at getting the passes, right? So, and he did that, and it was Gase's coaching staff that got him there. Anyway, but Durham Smythe was brought in to be specifically a blocker, maybe a catch every now and again, and he's been pretty good at that. I would say overall he's been kind of neutral, but certainly leads a little bit more towards the hit side. So Minkah Fitzpatrick, hit slash superstar. Mike Gesicki, hit. Jerome Baker, hit. Durham Smythe, neutral but leaning towards hit. Kalen Ballage, I'd say personally neutral, leaning more towards miss at this point, but I understand why he was brought in. He was supposed to be, a complimentary piece, and a developmental piece behind Frank Gore and Kenyon Drake, who are different backs. Frank Gore is supposed to be the up the gut, always going to get you 4 yards kind of back, tough running, goal line. And Kenyon Drake was supposed to be, the make a guy miss and get to the edge and with that speed and break tackles kind of guy. And they're a good 1-2 punch. And Kalen Ballage was supposed to evolve and develop into a Frank Gore type running back behind Frank Gore, behind the tutelage of Frank Gore. Okay, that was Gase's vision for him, and in those circumstances, I think Caleb Ballage actually would be a really good running back and a complementary piece. So to me, he's still neutral for sure. I would say that he still has a chance to be a hit. He just needs to be in the right system and the right situation, etc. Whatever. But as of right now, and whatever, to be fair, I'll say that right now he's neutral, leaning slightly more towards the miss side. Cornell Armstrong, I would say, is probably a miss overall. Quentin Poling, a miss overall. And Jason Sanders, a hit. So you have Minkah Fitzpatrick, Mike Gesicki, Jerome Baker, Durham Smythe, and Jason Sanders, who are all at least neutral, leaning towards hit and hits for sure, including Minkah Fitzpatrick, who is also a generational talent and a superstar and going to the Pro Bowl this year. Okay? That's over half of your draft class from last year. All right? And those are Adam Gase's drafts. Under Adam Gase's team, like, Chris Grier gets some credit. Absolutely, he does. He gets a little bit of credit there because he was certainly part of it, and he was a lead man in making those decisions. And in fact, I really respected the fact that he went with Minkah Fitzpatrick over taking a quarterback despite Stephen Ross's objections, because it was a fabulous pick and it has proven to be, right? But one thing we've noted is that Chris Grier is generally a consensus guy. So, it will have to, we'll have to wait and see how things go forward with Reggie McKenzie and Marvin Allen and Brian Flores and Stephen Ross. I mean, but last year, from what we could tell, Stephen Ross was taking mostly a hands-off approach and kind of letting them do it. The only time that we noted that he really said anything was in the Minkah. He just, wanted to trade back and then pick up a quarterback at some point. Accrue more draft capital and pick up a quarterback. Okay? But this year, we know he's going to be super aggressive in there. And we know that they're going to take a quarterback. He has mandated that they take a quarterback early and high. Okay? So we know that's going to happen. So he's going to have more, input this year. But now but Chris Grier is going to also have Marvin Allen, Reggie McKenzie, and Brian Flores giving their inputs. So, and they're all different people. What if they differ in their perspectives? I find it hard to believe that they're all going to be at 100% exactly, on the same page. Like, legitimately, they might agree to some things like taking the quarterback because Stephen Ross demands it, but do they really believe that? Who knows? Do they really feel like so we're going to have to see. But let's look at the first draft under Brian Flores, Chris Grier, Marvin Allen, Reggie McKenzie, and Stephen Ross. Christian Wilkins in the first round overall has been very underwhelming, right? I would say that Devon Godshaw is actually probably better than he is, right? Overall. Now, he still has a lot more potential, and it's only his first season. He's got to adjust to the NFL, etc., etc. So to be fair, he's nowhere close to being fully judged. But in year one, he's definitely underwhelming, especially for his draft status as a number one pick, right? As a first round pick, I should say, right? Because he was picked 13th overall, but he was our first round pick. Okay? And especially then when you consider that there was a massive run on defensive linemen in the first round. Like, all the top talent went off the board, and even maybe a couple players were reached for before they got to that, and then Christian Wilkins was taken by the Dolphins. They could have shored up the offensive line instead. I would have taken, personally, Garrett Bradbury. I saw a thing, to be fair, that he's been struggling in pass protection a little bit, but overall, the Vikings have been a great team, a really good team this year, and I think are, either in the playoffs or pushing for the playoffs. And that could have been, but of course, again, he needs to be given, a little bit of leeway. It's his rookie season, etc. But I would have taken him over Christian Wilkins personally. Garrett Bradbury is absolutely way better than Michael Dieter. So Christian Wilkins in his first season, his rookie season, has been very underwhelming. We didn't have a second round pick because it was Josh Rosen. That's looking to be like an overwhelmingly massive failure. At least now, I mean, sure, it could turn around. He could be on the roster next year and maybe he starts. Who knows? But I find it almost inconceivable that he'll be on the roster past next year, and that after we draft a quarterback high, that he'd be starting over him. So from my perspective, those are predictions that I'm making. I predict that if Rosen is on the team next year, he won't last past next year. He won't be on the 2021 roster, if he's even on the 2020 roster. And since I predict that Stephen Ross is going to, demand that they take a quarterback high. So I believe that they will be. And if we do, he's not going to start over that guy. I find it inconceivable that Rosen would start over Ross's coveted, first round high quarterback pick. Okay, so our second round pick, and let's be honest and fair, a 5th round from the 2020 draft was wasted on Josh Rosen. So the first draft under them so far is underwhelming for their first round pick and a disaster for their second round pick. So Christian Wilkins is a neutral right now. In his first year, leaning a little bit more towards miss. But to be fair, he needs to be given, he's still got plenty of time. He's still got at least another 3 years and a 5th year option, right, to be able to turn it around. It's his rookie season, etc. Okay, let's look at our 3rd round pick, Michael Dieter. I mean, he's just been a fucking hot mess. Tons of penalties, giving up a bunch of sacks. He's just garbage. He's not good. Now, I mean, to be fair, it's his rookie season, etc., and he still has several years to go before you can fully judge him. But in his rookie season, he's been garbage. So far, he's been a miss. We didn't have a 4th round pick. Andrew Van Ginkel spent half the season on injured reserve. Okay. Came back. Finally, up until the last game, he had only made like a couple special teams plays. Okay, whatever. But he did make a couple plays last game, but still, I mean, no better than average. So that's a neutral at best. I don't think it would be quite fair to say, leaning towards miss. I mean, I guess if you look at the overall first season, since he spent half of it injured and, he's been just maybe okay since he's, gotten back. You could make an argument for its neutral, leaning slightly towards miss, but I would just say neutral. Isaiah Prince was taken in the 6th round. Well, he's not even on the team anymore, so he's already gone after just within his, but he's been on and off, the injury report and on and off the active roster, etc. He hasn't played very well either. And now he's not even on the team. He's on the Bengals. So he's no longer even with the team. So that's one of the draft picks that's just gone. So for the Dolphins, it's a firm miss. Even if he ends up being, which he could, and then that certainly would improve upon the overall status of the draft class as a whole. But it wouldn't obviously benefit the Dolphins at all because he's not on the Dolphins. Chandler Cox, he was inactive. Or he's just been MIA the vast majority of the season. When he has been in, he has been at least part of a couple good plays. But, again, average maybe at best. So that's, at best a neutral. Myles Gaskin, I mean, he's on the injured reserve list now, but he was inactive for at least the first half of the season. And again, just been at best okay since he's, played and when he has been on the field. So when you look at all of these drafts, right? So there's multiple factors that need to be taken into account, right? Because Chris Grier has been involved with all of those drafts, right? He's been a lead man on every single one of them, okay? Now, and has had a major say in every single one of them. But the 3 under Adam Gase and Mike Tannenbaum were overwhelmingly hits, right? At least half the draft class were hits. And you even got a couple foundational superstars like Tunsil, Howard, and Fitzpatrick. And then good solid players like Kenyon Drake, Raekwon McMillan, Devon Gottschall, Vincent Taylor, Jerome Baker, Durham Smythe, Mike Gesicki, Jason Sanders. All great players to have on your roster as either starting guys or rotational guys or backups. You're not going to hit on all of them, so it's not fair to say that they had to, but then if you look at the one draft class under Chris Grier, Marvin Allen, Reggie McKenzie, and Brian Flores, it's, to be as fair as possible, it's lackluster. There's no superstars, at least right now, that's perceivable. One of them's not even on the fucking team already, and it's only their rookie season. They've been hurt. Some of them have been trash. Like, So when we evaluate these things, right, one of my biggest issues with people is they constantly will cherry pick things, right? So real quick, let's go back to that tweet by who was it? God damn it. Adam Beasley. Jesus, I don't know why I was blanking there. The tweet by Adam Beasley. People love bringing up Chris Grier's misses, but they don't give him enough credit for his hits. Okay, so during his time, during the past 3 years, right, from the 16 to the 2018 drafts, he gets a ton of credit, right, for all those guys. Minka Fitzpatrick, Laramie Tunsil, Xavier Howard, Kenyon Drake, Jakeem Grant, Vincent Taylor, Isaiah Ford, Devon Gottschall, Raekwon McMillan, Jason Sanders, Durham Smythe, Jerome Baker, Mike Gesicki, Minka Fitzpatrick. He gets credit for all those guys, right? He gets credit for drafting those guys. But he was also a sellout, just like Brian Flores was, and adopted the tanking philosophy that Stephen Ross demanded of them. And also, because of that philosophy, he allowed himself to trade away guys like Minka Fitzpatrick and Laramie Tunsil, even though they didn't have to. They could have said no, right? So he loses some of that credit is the point, right? So he gets credit for drafting them and what have you, but then some of that gets, blemished because of the fact that he was just so willing to just part with them, right? And then his first draft class, but again, you also got to look at who else was in the room, who else was part of it. Gase, again, because Gesicki and all those guys wouldn't have been, Minka Fitzpatrick wouldn't have come to the Dolphins to begin with if Gase wasn't here. Gase had a lot of say in that, right? Okay, and so if Gase and Tannenbaum weren't here, these draft classes would be totally different. So it's not just Grier, right? It's the other guys with him. That's why I emphasize the Gase drafts. Because if Gase wasn't here, now Tannenbaum to me has just kind of been hit or miss. I think he's had some really good ones, but also had some pretty bad ones, right? He's kind of a neutral, guy as far as I'm concerned. His record as a GM and in drafts and so on and so forth, to me is pretty like even. He's kind of like a 500 GM. But to me, the big factor there was Adam Gase, right? Because they were building the team under Adam Gase's vision. He's the head coach, and that's why it's ridiculous to think that Brian Flores is not going to be a major part, right? Even if he doesn't, necessarily speak up and voice his opinions very much, which we obviously know is not true, based off of his own admissions that he has had a hand in every single transaction that the Dolphins have made this year. So we know he's going to voice his opinions on the different picks and so on and so forth. But they have to build the team in the head coach's image, right? You always get the personnel based off, they might be guys that the GM likes or the owner likes, but you're supposed to build the team based off of the image that the head coach wants to build. And that's part of the reason why it can be problematic when you have guys like, especially somebody like Stephen Ross, overriding the decisions when he's proven not to be able to make good football decisions. But you don't want to build it in the image of the real estate billionaire owner. Instead, you want to build it in the image of the guy who's made a career of football, right? Stephen Ross didn't do anything in football until he bought the Miami Dolphins, right? Adam Gase, Brian Flores, both of them have made a career out of football, so you build the team around them. But so far, but when they were building the team in Adam Gase's vision, man, that team was really coming together. And same thing with free agents, right? Adam Gase didn't want to be a big spender in free agency and bring on the big names, and overpay them and so on and so forth. Put yourself in, the cap hell, especially considering the fact that he wanted to be a, in-house kind of guy. Pay the guys that are proven in-house. And then especially when you draft guys like Minkah Fitzpatrick, Laramie Tunsil, and Xavier Howard, who are going to need big contracts, you want to make sure that you have the cap space. But that's going to be hard when not only do you have draft picks that you're going to have to sign to big contracts, but then you spend big in free agency and bloat your cap space, right? And so, but we know that's what they're going to do this offseason. So already their first draft is lackluster, underwhelming, to say the best thing and most fair thing about it, right? But in the Gase regime, it was great drafts. Definitely building in the right direction. And also goes back to why I said none of this was necessary. If Gase and Tannenbaum and Grier together were given another draft, right, and another year, getting all those guys that they had from last year healthy, they still would have had Frank Gore. Danny Amendola might still be around, a proven veteran. Who else? They'd still have Laramie Tunsil and Minkah Fitzpatrick. Ryan Tannehill, who's been killing it for the fucking Titans, would still be on the team. They'd still have Kiko Alonso, who's doing, not phenomenal, but doing, he has been injured a little bit, but doing good for the Saints, right? So we'd still have all these guys, and this team would actually be competitive this year. Now, of course, there's no way to know that for sure since it didn't, come into existence. But I can virtually guarantee it, man. Virtually guarantee it, right? Because you just look at the way the team was being built anyway. And so I personally don't have the trust and faith in the regime as it stands to get things right. And because, again, Brian Flores and Chris Grier have proven to be sellouts to Stephen Ross's demands. He's going to be heavily involved in this, and he's terrible at making football decisions. He's going to demand that they get a pick. We'll see how this next week turns out. I find it almost inconceivable that we would beat the Patriots. But if we did, that could drop our pick to the number 6th overall pick. Currently, we stand at number 5. With the Steelers being 19 and the Texans being 25. We could also move up to the number 2 overall pick, but that would require the Giants, the Lions, and the Redskins all winning their games, which I find to be rather inconceivable as well. The Giants could potentially win their game, but that's maybe about it. Maybe we can move up to 4th. But don't be surprised if Stephen Ross demands that they trade away because he feels like and again, just like free agency, we know they're going to be big spenders. He thinks he can just throw resources at it. So in this case, I'm saying resources because it also includes draft capital. In the past, he's felt like he could just, throw money at it, like with Ndamukong Suh, right? And then they got rid of him under the Adam Gase regime because that was hurting the cap space. He wasn't, playing to the contract, et cetera, et cetera. And since then, he's pretty much kind of fallen off, right? He's been trending downward for sure. So, we already know he's going to be a big spender in free agency, and don't be surprised if he takes some of that draft capital, a good portion of it, to move up. If we end up, with the 5th overall pick, which is where I think we're going to end up, right? That's my guess, is that we'll end up having the 5th overall pick come draft day. And if we sit there, and then if the Steelers pick is in the high teens and the Texans pick is in the mid-20s, don't be surprised. He wouldn't necessarily have to trade away all 3 of this year's first round picks. He could trade away a first round from next year, some of, next year's draft capital that we've accrued. But don't be surprised if Stephen Ross says, you know what? We're going to trade away a bunch, because we have it. We have a bounty of it, right? A war chest of draft picks. So let's throw a bunch of it and go get that quarterback. The only one really that, who knows? They could trade up and take Tua, which I think would be the ultimate disaster, personally. But they could even potentially convince the Bengals, hey, Give us that number 1 pick. We'll give you all 3 of our first round picks this year. They might take that, because if we're drafting at number 5, they could still get a quarterback that they, believe in, even if we were to go up and take Justin Herbert. Not just Joe Burrow, right? But they could get Justin Herbert, they could get Fromm, they could get Love. There's a bunch of guys that they could get at number 5 if they wanted to, or even Tua if they felt like taking a bet on him was worth it, right? Chase Young's not coming out in the 2020 draft, so I don't know why people continue to talk about him. But they actually might take that, even if they felt like they were going to lose out on Joe Burrow. And I think that would be a massive disaster, because then you're taking him and putting him into a situation where he's set up to fail without any kind of an adequate offensive line or run game. So anyway, but we still have to wait and see. After this next week, we'll at least know the draft positioning for all the teams that don't make it into the playoffs, right? So we'll know. Right now, the Steelers are not in the playoffs, right? They've barely fallen out of the wild card. They could get back in after this week. Some things need to happen in their favor, so they obviously need to win. I think the Titans would have to lose, I believe. Who play? I believe they play the Texans this week. The Texans are for sure in the playoffs. They've already won their division, so that doesn't matter. The Titans are not going to take the division, but they can still make the playoffs. They're currently in one of the wild card spots, but they could lose it to the Steelers if they lose, and if the Steelers end up winning. And I think maybe one or two other things would have to happen as well. But after this week, we'll at least know whether or not the Steelers are in the playoffs. And if not, then we'll know where they're going to pick for sure. And then if they do make it, then we'll have to wait to see where they and Houston ultimately end up picking. And yeah, Minnesota's in the playoffs, by the way. And so, we'll have to wait. But we'll know a lot more after this week. And then obviously it's only going to be a few more weeks before the season's just flat out over. The Super Bowl's only in a few weeks, right? So that's fast approaching. So pretty soon we're going to know exactly where all of our picks are going to be. And then we can start speculating a little bit more on what we think that they're going to do. After we know, definitely once the Super Bowl is over, or at the very least, once all of the teams that are relevant are out of it. So, it would go to the Super Bowl if, let's say, Houston somehow made it into the Super Bowl. They could possibly win a game in the playoffs. Maybe against one of the wild card teams. But I don't think that I don't think the Texans are going to make it all the way to the Super Bowl. So I think it's likely they'll probably lose in the divisional round. But if they did, then we would have to wait all the way to the Super Bowl to determine exactly where they're going to be picking. But, once that's done, once we know exactly where all of our picks are, then I'll definitely be making a video that speculates a little bit more on what I think that this organization is going to do once we actually know for sure where we're picking. Anyway, so like I said, this ended up being, over almost 40 minutes worth of conversation. But like I said, I thought it was a pretty important thing to discuss because, again, so many people have faith in this franchise. And, with Chris Grier, he's the only one from the past few years that's still around, right? During the Adam Gase era, because Tannenbaum's gone, Gase is gone. Well, and Stephen Ross and Chris Grier are here, right? Now, Stephen Ross has been a pretty big disaster overall as the owner since he took over. Chris Grier's been okay. He gets a ton of credit for the drafts that he was here for and had a hand in with Adam Gase and Mike Tannenbaum. But Adam Gase and Mike Tannenbaum, particularly Adam Gase, since they were building the team and his vision was the biggest factor. as far as I'm concerned, and why those drafts were really good, but they were really good. And the first draft so far under Grier, Marvin Allen, Reggie McKenzie, Flores, and Ross is pretty disappointing. And I personally don't believe that they are going to get it right going forward, especially considering Stephen Ross is going to be even more, involved and, be pushing for a quarterback, etc. So, look, man, everybody obviously has their perspective. Like I said, it's mind-boggling to me, but apparently 70% of the Dolphins fan base still feels like this team is headed in the right direction. I don't know how you could see that. And I mean, because again, Chris Grier gets a ton of credit for drafting for having really good drafts from 16 to 18, but he also, all of the good guys, almost all of them are gone, except for Xavier Howard and Devon Godshaw, Raekwon McMillan, Jerome Baker, Mike Gesicki. There are still a handful of them around. But, they got rid of the superstars, Laramie Tunsil and Fitzpatrick. They got rid of, Kenyon Drake. They got rid of, and then not only that though, with the underwhelming first draft that they have and the way that they strip this entire team, it, totally mars that record and blemishes that record. And again, I just don't have faith that they're going to get it right going forward. Anyway, that's what I got for you guys. I hope you guys enjoy my videos and my perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts for my videos. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I'm out. I'll see y'all soon. Phins up.